I was writing a sort of round the town column, and a woman friend of mine said, "You really should go down to the Marina Safeway and check out the hetero cruising scene going down there on Wednesday nights."
She said that to you?
She said it to me. And no, she didn't think I could make use of it. It feels like it's cutting out, is it? Is it we all right?
You're fine.
So I went down there and tried to find someone who would admit that they were down there on Wednesday night to get laid at the grocery store. And of course nobody, even the really overly dressed, well-dressed ones who looked like they were definitely shopping for something other than artichokes. None of them would talk to me, so I made up this girl named Mary Ann Singleton. I made the name because it was like a pun on single town. And the singleton also means a one-of-a-kind sort of person who's apart from the crowd, and I thought it just had a nice ring to it. Later, the woman who wrote Bridget Jones told me that I should honor her with her name, but I'm not remembering it right now. They refer to singletons in Bridget Jones as she makes it into a noun that describes a single woman living in a city, and she said she got it from Mary Ann.
Wow.
Can we close that door? It's really chilly. Just come on in. This unnatural warmth that's been in the city seems to have left a little bit today. So that's how I basically wrote a hypothetical situation where she's there cruising the Safeway, and she finally meets a really cute guy, and he turns out to be gay, and just tons of women in the Bay Area who'd read it somehow or other rang a bell for them.
And they're all wondering, wait a minute, is that me? And if you think about it, at the time, Armistead, very early on, a spliff-smoking transsexual landlady who we've got to know and love, and of course the States book is all about her. You were dealing with things back then in the mid-70s that people even in San Francisco, especially your editors at the Chronicle, when the column moved there, they weren't really ready to deal with it. They were really also concerned about the ratio of homosexuals mentioned in the stories versus heterosexuals, weren't they?
Yeah, there was a chart. There's an actual chart in the office of the managing editor that said homosexual and heterosexual, and every time a new character was introduced, they put it into the appropriate chart with the idea that the homosexuals should not overtake the number of heterosexuals and thereby upset the natural course of civilization.
And so Armistead being Armistead, you decided to put a dog in the story, a Great Dane that shagged a lady. And so what column did that fit in?
I said it had to go into the heterosexual column. He didn't exactly shag her, she just passed out drunk in her, wonderful word, shag.
I just had to get it in there, yeah.
She had a really drunken luncheon in Hillsborough, and passed out in her own herb garden, and when she woke up, the dog was pleasuring himself on her leg. And that'll be all for today.
Have you guys already had your lunch? Okay. Stay with us. Honestly, throughout your books, even though they are tales, you've spoken truth, and I think truth is at the core of who you are as a writer, and the truth you speak has spoken to so many people because it is the truth. Ongoing in the 80s, when AIDS first hit, you got a bit of grief at first because your stories were light, they were fun, your great humor was a great way for many people to begin their day. Then AIDS came, and that story and that truth became part of your tales.
It pretty much had to be. I mean, I lost a very close friend to pneumocystis pneumonia in 1982. He was one of the first 1,000 casualties. And I knew that if I was telling the story about the city, that I'd have to find a way to incorporate it. And so I sort of did it off stage by taking this beloved character, John Fielding, who was played so wonderfully by Billy Campbell in all three of the miniseries. And I showed the response to his death at the beginning of the story, and readers who suddenly realized that one of their favorite characters had died got quite. It was like a little Nell moment for me, the Dickensian thing where they got mad at him for killing a character. A lot of gay people, I have to say. How dare you spoil our light morning entertainment with your political agenda? But of course, very shortly it became everyone's political agenda, and I was glad it was in there.
And even in that darkness, in those tough times for everyone, not just here in the city, but everywhere across America, you found humor.
Well, I think that's the best defense. A writer I admire enormously, the great Edmund White, wrote an essay at the time that said, humor has no place in this epidemic. Let's get this straight right away. Humor has no place in this epidemic. Well, thank goodness he was wrong, and thank goodness he had the grace to say he was wrong a little bit later on, because humor is such a marvelous defense in our darkest hour, and I knew that would be the way to get through it. And so then I started writing episodes where guys with AIDS dementia were setting fire to trash cans in Louise Hay seminars, where you actually saw anybody who knows anybody who was going through that saw the way in which laughter could rescue you. I think it is such an obvious thing to me. It was the only thing I had to work with, and I went with it.
You took a break for 16 years between book number, was it Baby Cakes and?
No, Sure View.
Yeah.
Was 89.
Right.
And then I came back with Michael Tolliver Lives. I think it's almost 20 years.
And in that time, were all those characters still living for you? Were you writing it all, or had you put it to bed?
No, it wasn't like it was going. I'm not crazy, Liam. No, it wasn't like going on while I was living through that time. But
you wrote other things. You wrote behind this.
I was working on the television miniseries during that time too, and there were 2 other standalone novels. But it wasn't hard to jump back into it because they'd always been pieces of myself. So the ways in which I had aged and my attitudes had changed were simply there. I just drew on them again to get back in.
Is it fair to say to know these characters is to know Armistead Maupin?
To know how to put them together is to know me, I suppose. Yeah, people, the assumption is always that I'm Michael, and I use a lot of him autobiographically. But I've been Dee Dee. This time around I was Anna. I thought, okay, you're old. That's 92. You can be old. It's not that far. Yeah, Olivia, actually, Dukakis, who read the book and called me up with many sweet things to say, and said, okay, is it going to be a movie? She's 92. I can play 92.
This latest book, The Days of Anna Madrigal, I've never been under such pressure. I only had 24 hours to read this, because I only got my copy last night. And I almost got there. I didn't quite get to the end. I couldn't put it down, but it was 3 a.m. I had to go to bed, honestly. So
I'd rather you not give away. Don't give away the end.
I won't. Well, that bit, when the dragon comes in and there's an elephant and a little person.
Damn it! Spoiler alert.
In the desert, Burning Man. So let me ask you this, because I know you've been to Burning Man a few times with your husband Christopher. Was this story still coming together as you went to Burning Man? Were you inspired by what you saw there and you put it in the book? How did that all come about, and how did you weave it into the book?
Well, in the first place, you cannot write about Burning Man unless you actually go to Burning Man.
Yeah. Who's been to Burning Man?
Anybody? There we are.
Well, the 2 burners. Well done.
Yay!
Well done, burners.
Do you have a burn name? Do you have a burn name?
Do you have a burn?
Do you have a burn name?
Jorge.
Jorge?
Jorge, says the man usually known as John. Right. Thank you.
Hi from U-Haul.
What was that?
Hi from U-Haul.
Hi from U-Haul. Is that a camp?
I think he said something about U-Haul, right?
Your next door neighbor, he says.
Yeah.
Oh, at Celestial Bodies, next to. I see you waving. I don't hear anything coming out of your mouth. You have been to Burning Man.
He's still at Burning Man, apparently. We'll get you in for the Q&A a little bit later. So, Armistead,
People, you often choose. This is driving me crazy. You often choose a burn name, a name that you pick out of the air. I didn't have one the first year. The second year, I became Sofa Daddy.
please explain, what is the Sofa Daddy?
I was just.
Yeah, take this.
Yeah.
Take this one.
We can just pass this.
Yeah, for you.
I was a sofa whore.
Ah.
A lot of the camps there have hauled in sofas out there in the middle of this barren, playa in the middle of nowhere, and I would just go around to camps and say, "You got a sofa?" Because I like to sit down, and you get tired walking around out there. This year, Christopher, my husband, said, "You know what? I think you should take a tricycle this year." When you read the book, you'll see why. I had a few disastrous mishaps that I gave to Michael in the novel, so I got an adult tricycle, which is fabulous because you can just pedal for a while and then you can stop and sit on the tricycle and look around and then pedal some more. It was a challenge, really, describing this, trying to describe it. Have you been to Burning Man?
No, but I'm going to go this year.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
I'll see you there.
Good. Going this year. No, you won't see me this year.
Yeah.
I called it a Fellini Carnival on Mars in the novel
Yeah.
because it's very, very challenging to describe. It's really such a visual thing. It's an amazing, amazing thing. And I knew that it would be useful for this story, for Tales of the City, because coincidences can happen. I mean, it was sort of like Barbary Lane, and everybody can bump into everybody else. And there are no cell phones out there, so
Yay.
things happen. Yay! Things happen accidentally. You bump into people, and they say so and so is over at Chakralicious. You might want to go over there. You're Chakralicious? All right! Yay! Was that the hand that was waving? Where? Yay! You're Chakralicious. That's the best title in the world, by the way.
No, that was her chakra.
That, I was at Celestial Bodies. About 5 of my campmates showed up in Danville last night. And Celestial Bodies is a Cosmo bar. We bring vodka and Gatorade into the desert to, help the thirsty wayfarers. And your duties are taking care of the bar. So I bartended one night, had just a ball.
And everything's bartered, right? It's all bartered.
Everything's bartered, not bartered. You don't do one thing for another. Everything's given away. But you also have to bring in your food and your water, and you have to take everything out, every single scrap of everything. They have a term called MOOP, M-O-O-P, matter out of place. There's a whole set of rules, and you can first couple of days you can kind of feel like a new kid at camp, where you're wondering if you're doing anything the right way. But it's special, and it was fun to write about.
What was the highlight for you at Burning Man?
My favorite, there's an art car there called El Popo Mecanico, which is a giant fire-breathing octopus that waves its arms in kind of a Nelly way. It kind of looks like a Marcus Bachmann coming into a green room to greet his wife. It would be hard to know. I mean, there's so much wit there. There was a camp there called Dr. Scroat's Circumcision Wagon and Calamari Hut. You really have to love that, But a bunch of the characters end up going there in this novel, and as you know, Anna herself is off on a mission in Brian's Winnebago to Winnebucca, her childhood home. And she grew up in the brothel, if you remember, she grew up in a brothel in Winnemucca, Nevada. I had written about Winnemucca for 35 years and never been to Winnemucca until a year and a half ago. And my husband and I took our dog on this cross-country trip, and we went through Winnemucca, and we picked a road where we thought the whorehouse should be. and drove out and scoped it all out and ate at the little Martin Hotel there in town, where the owner of the place sort of, I think, recognizing us as people who might find it amusing, showed us the pattern in the wallpaper from 1870, which looked on at first glance like a floral, embossed floral thing. And he said, "Look again." And then you realize it's just a whole bunch of penises and vaginas intertwined.
How fitting.
How fitting. And I could work it I could use it in the novel. And now I'm sure that sweet little Basque hotel's going to have all sorts of dirty-minded tourists going in there to look at the wallpaper.
What's your burner name, Armistead?
Sofa Daddy.
So that was
Yeah.
Sofa Daddy.
Yeah.
Sofa Daddy.
But I didn't say it all the time. I feel a little silly with the burner name.
So this novel, it's the end. Sorry.
So this novel, it is the end, because Anna has made peace with her logical family. And we all know the difference between logical and biological, don't we? Yeah. I didn't know what that meant until I moved to San Francisco. How did that term come about for you?
I don't know, thought it up. I mean,
Makes sense.
Yeah, it occurred to me one day, and it was applicable to my own life and to the lives of a lot of people I know, gay and straight, who simply figure out, I think particularly in this time, this age, that there are very few reasons not to form a family that will support you and understand you and love you through all circumstances and not be tortured by, the thing that most people go home for holidays for and can't wait to get away from again. It's nice. In my own life, I have people who are members of my biological family who are also members of my logical family. And anybody who's on Facebook knows what that distinction is,
Yes.
who you want to let in and who you don't want to let in. I thought I was being very hip, by the way, by my mastery of Facebook, and then I found out that the kids today just all think it's hopelessly geezery. They refer to it as facelift. But it's made a big difference in my life. I really like it.
Well, for you as a writer, much of it has to be about connecting with people, with your readers, your fans. And you get to do that directly through Facebook.
Yeah, and I'm sounding like an ad for it. If I'm whoring for Facebook, bring me the money. But I mean it. I actually reunited with when I was an officer in the Navy in the late '60s. There was an incredibly cute young signalman in my division, and I really had to be officer-like and behave myself at every moment, but I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that he was such a cute, sweet guy. And we have since reunited on Facebook. He's straight. He's had about 3 wives since then, and
But he's straight.
what's that?
But he's straight.
But he's straight. But he calls me Mr. Maupin, sir, on Facebook, and does this whole jokey thing about the fact that I was his officer, and he said, "So what have you been up to?" So I just laid it all out there, and my husband is this person, and there he was. He lives in the South somewhere, and he was totally, saying, "I'm so happy for you, and I'd love to meet Chris someday," and so to me, the forum tells you that the world's a little more civilized than you think it is outside of the Bay Area, and it's been nice.
I'm hoping, Armistead, in a bit you may be willing to read for us. I do want to ask you one quick question. Of course, it's been talked about. You and husband Christopher did move to Santa Fe and enjoying a new life there. What is life there like in Santa Fe? How is it for you? And do you miss the city?
Yes, I miss the city. We've been back for about 5 days, and we've, just been having wonderful times with our friends, and I truly do miss the city. There's a number, it's complicated, does anybody know? There's a number of facts that weigh on you. That I find the traffic and the heightened intensity of the place difficult sometimes. We had financial reasons for selling our house because royalties were down, publishing isn't doing as well as it has in the past. And you can buy for the price of your house in San Francisco, you can buy 15 acres and a much bigger adobe ranch house at the end of a dirt road where we are.
Yeah.
And so we had an option to move to someplace that we wouldn't be happy with, somewhere near San Francisco, and spend all our time on a freeway trying to get to the places that we loved, or have a brand new experience.
Yeah.
So we opted for the new experience. I hope it will be one of our homes, and when we move into our little pied-à-terre at Selma Self-Storage, we'll be a two-home owner. But that's our dream is to spend the greater part of the year here in some way, if we could possibly pull that off. But everybody knows how tough that is, and what rents are, and all of that.
I'm sure there's someone here who's got a granny cottage they'd be willing just to give from Armistead. Surely? Oh, no. That was awkward. Hey, listen, I've got a spare. We can always stay at my place, you know that.
Bless your heart.
So, Armistead, is there a little part of the book you'd like to read a little part of the chapter? And who's read any of the book?
about my baby?
Oh gosh. Oh, also, big news. I was going to bring it up, but Armistead does have some news. It may not be breaking news,
Well, it's
but
not
it's big
breaking
news.
news.
But part of your logical family has delivered a new one to you, a newborn.
Yeah, I'd known about the pregnancy for about 4 months, but didn't know the rest until the day the kid was born. But Laura Liddy, who played Mary Ann in Tales of the City, had a baby 12 years. And here he is. No. 12 days ago, Laura gave birth to a baby boy and named him Bennett Armistead Shower, her husband's name is Shower. She told me this, she called, as I say, we knew she was pregnant because she Skyped us her tummy about 4 months before, and I have, speaking frankly as a gossipy homosexual man, I've never had a harder time keeping quiet about anything ever. But the day that Bennett was born, she called me, and I was lying flat on my back getting my teeth cleaned at the dentist's office in Santa Fe. And I'm sorry, I have to take this call. And that's what she told me what they named the baby, and there was so much screaming in the dentist's office that several hygienists came running to help out.
With more gas.
More gas, yeah. Anyway, I bragged too much about that, but it was such an honor. I feel so happy about that. It was such a gift. I told her, I said earlier, I didn't think you could outdo the time you called and invited me to be your date to the Oscars. But you just did it, you know. All right, let's see.
Who's read the book? Who's read the book? Anyone? Read it yet?
Un petit peu in the front.
You read the whole thing? Well done. When did you get your copy this morning?
I interviewed him a while ago, so I read it.
Oh, you got the advance. Oh, well done. Come in. Just come in.
That's Brian. Right there.
That's right. By the way, who's reading the book on a Kindle? A friend of mine said he had a copy delivered at midnight, electronically.
9 o'clock last night.
9 o'clock last night.
That's when I started reading, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty.
They got an independent bookstore, don't hurt me.
Yeah, really. That's a little.
Remove
That was very brave of you.
But you're gonna buy a hard copy too, right? Yes, she is. Yeah.
To hold the Kindle on.
Yeah.
The novel goes back and forth between present day and 1936 Winnemucca, when Anna Madrigal is little Andy Ramsey. And the way I was trying to think of a good device to take the story from the past to the present, and naturally, weed came to mind because it's Anna, and she sees no reason at 92 to give it up completely. She has a device.
Are you sitting comfortably? We shall begin.
See if I can do this with. You gotta try it like that. Anna has a caretaker named Jake Greenleaf, a young trans man that lives with her in the Dubose Triangle, and they form a kind of interesting, odd couple. He sits there and reads his magic slate, as she calls it, at night. Speaking of Kindles. And she reads her musty old copy of Richard Halliburton's Book of Marbles that she had when she was a boy, which has a very distinctive smell to it, of rosewater and Lysol, which was basically the smell of the brothel. So anyway, I think that'll lead us in. Just before bedtime, Jake brought out the volcano, a contraption that never failed to amuse Anna in every phase of its nonsensical operation. It was silver and squat, cone-shaped like a mouse-sized space capsule, and its purpose was to deliver the herb, superheated and free of smoke, into the clear plastic bag writhing above it. Do you ever use one?
Plead the fifth.
Okay. Once inflated, this voluptuously bobbing bladder would be removed and handed to Anna, who would puff only once on a mouthpiece that looked as if it belonged on a wind instrument of some sort, possibly a bagpipe. Jake invariably conducted this ritual with deadpan solemnity, so Anna, out of respect, tried to follow suit, though she could never shake the feeling that they were engaged in an East European clown act, or a fraternity prank involving rubbers and a tank of helium. The volcano had been a Christmas gift from a friend, a former tenant at her old house on Russian Hill. Mary Ann had spent her middle years in the East with a well-to-do Republican husband, only to return to the city on the brink of 60 with a pocket full of alimony and a heartbreaking need to ingratiate herself to the past. Jake had only to declare within earshot that fancy vaporizers of this ilk were $700 fucking, and Mary Ann was off and running. She presented it to them almost formally during a picnic lunch she'd organized at Occupy San Francisco. They had no place to plug it in, of course, so full appreciation had been postponed. What is this? Anna was holding the valve of the balloon now. She would half expected that if released, it would fly around the room making farting noises. What is what? The name. I enjoy the names. Oh. He picked up the shiny gold packet from the Cannabis Club. Its sleek design evoked something you might find in a Japanese grocery store. Blue Dream, he said, reading the label. Same as last time. She inhaled the sweet, smokeless cloud and held it for a moment. Lovely, she said at last. I think it's my favorite. The purple tush was a little oppressive. Jake chuckled. Kush. What? Purple kush, not tush. Jake took the balloon from her. Purple tush, ugh. She finally caught his gist. Oppressive purple tush, no less. He laughed like a child who had just been tickled. They must have an ointment for that, she added, wanting to prolong his mirth, but was promptly interrupted by the cricket chirping merrily in his dreams. He tugged his phone from his pocket and examined the surface. It's Brian, he told her. I'm not going to go on into that part because I want you to discover it on your own. But
wouldn't it be great if Armistead could sit on your bed and read to you every night? Press a button and he appears into your bed, reads to you. Yeah. Sorry, that's just
thank
my
you. That's very sweet. The audiobook of this has been read by the wonderful Kate Mulgrew. Beautiful, rich, deep voice. She played Katharine Hepburn off Broadway, and she's in playing the crazy Russian cook in Orange is the New Black right now. And of course she was the first female commander on the Starship Enterprise.
Also Mrs. Colombo.
Mrs. Colombo, thank you.
Mary Ryan. Exactly.
Mary Ryan from As the World Turns.
So let me.
Just a little bit more here to take you into the past, back to 1936. We go there, of course, from Anna's going to sleep, and she's a tiny bit loaded, and she's in Blue Dream. The name of the pot is making her think of Blue Moon, the lodge, the name of the lodge back in Winnemucca. And as she falls asleep, she hears a chicken squawking. The chicken was in the pen out back, and the ruckus it was making woke Andy from an afternoon nap. They had not kept poultry for some time, so he figured Margaret was turning a trick with the Okie from down the road, who sometimes paid in livestock. He wondered if Violet had heard the chicken, and if she would be ugly about it at dinner and hurt Margaret's feelings again. Andy couldn't see why doing it for a good hen was any less respectable than doing it for a couple of bucks. He rolled on his side and gazed at the window shade. It had darkened to amber during his nap, and the acacia bush swam against it like mint in a glass of iced tea. These hot afternoons made him languid and dreamy. They made him think about the Basque boy at the drugstore, and the raven locks and his long eyelashes. "Listen up, ladies," Margaret's voice, addressing the various cabinets. "Who nabbed my Lysol?" Not a good time to open the shade. "Do you hear me, ladies?" No reply. "If I get knocked up," explosive laughter, probably Sadie's. "I mean it," yelled Margaret. "You ain't having no baby, Grandma." This time it was Violet being mean. Margaret was 45, the oldest girl at the Blue Moon, older even than Andy's mama, who ran the place, so the other girls could be spiteful. Andy figured they were jealous that Margaret had repeat customers. She was even asked for by name when college boys drove in from Reno, drunk as lords on casino gin. Violet's wisecrack brought raucous laughter from the cabinets, but there was no response at all from Margaret. Andy felt bad for her, so he cupped his hands and yelled through the shade, "There's a bottle of Lysol in the crapper." Another silence, then Margaret spoke in a more subdued tone. "Now there's a gentleman." Andy knew where this was leading. "Want me to get it?" "Would you, lamb? If I move an inch, this tapioca is going to make its way to glory." I had the other day on West Coast Live, I actually had to sign a paper that said I wouldn't say any dirty words on the air. And I looked at this and thought, okay, tapioca's not a dirty word. I'll explain. The urgency of the mission was underscored by the clanky flatulence of a jalopy coming to life just beyond the cabinets. The customer was already leaving. Andy hurried out to the crapper and found the bottle. By the time he got to Margaret's cabinet with a basin, there was only a distant plume of dust trailing out to the highway. Margaret was sitting on the edge of the bed in her peach camisole. She looked weary and resigned when he set the basin down beside her on the bed. "That's got to be watered down," she said. He nodded. "Already done it." "You have?" She touched the pea-colored solution with a look of tender amazement, as if he had just presented her with the Hope Diamond. "If that don't beat all," she murmured. "Where can I find one like you, Andy?" He shrugged, since it wasn't really a question. Margaret grabbed a sponge off the nightstand and dipped it into the basin, turning away from him as she began to scrub vigorously between her legs. Andy headed straight for the door, eyes to the floor, but Margaret was still talking. I swear, what did ladies do before Lysol? Another shrug. I ain't taking no chances. That Okie has 13 kids of his own. Andy knew that already. 2 of the girls were classmates at Humboldt High, compulsive gigglers who lived with their aunt on Mizpah Street. One of them had flirted with Andy on the bus the day before. He wondered if she would be trouble. Anyway, said Margaret, a good chicken will have us some eggs for breakfast. That'd be swell, he mumbled. Margaret was still scrubbing away. I know you like your eggs, she said. Margaret knew a lot of things about Andy. She knew things that happened before he was born, back when Mama was teaching piano in Rapid City and Margaret was her friend working at the Five and Dime. Margaret had always claimed that they were both ready to get out of there, and the opportunity presented itself when Mama got pregnant by a piano pupil whose father was, in Margaret's words, a big muckety-muck in the Chamber of Commerce and a hot-headed Greek to boot. Margaret's mean-as-a-snake husband had keeled over dead at the cement plant a week earlier, so she paid her debt to the Almighty by helping Mama through her ordeal. She was our salvation in the flight from the Pharisees, was how Mama had put it, implicating the unborn Andy in this biblical-sounding event. But it would be years before he would learn that their midnight motor trip to Nevada had been paid for with cash Margaret had lifted from the notions counter at the Five and Dime. He would learn this from Margaret, mind you, not Mama. Mama, when pressed on the matter, had said only that Andy's father was a hero of the Great War who succumbed to his wounds. An explanation that even at 9, Andy had found unconvincing, since he knew the radio show she was referencing. They had listened to it together, in fact, him and Mama down in the parlor on a slow night. A doughboy and a crippled Irish girl finding true love in New York City, if only briefly. Mama had been straight with Andy about her business. She was proud of that story. She and Margaret would tell it in tandem sometimes, playing to a crowd of rowdy customers in the parlor. Mama banging out the funny parts on the piano, shaking everything she had. They had been, quote, 2 sweet-ass gals flying on a wing in a prayer, though truthfully that prayer had not been uttered until their 3rd night in a Bridge Street hotel, when a railroad man, a perfectly nice gent in a suit, offered Margaret $5 to go upstairs and give him a blowjob. Margaret had been a knockout back then, a genuine Swedish blonde with cornflower blue eyes who never forgot her makeup. It had been a natural mistake, Mama insisted. What with all the plug ugly women out here in the desert? And maybe it had also been a sign from heaven. Maybe a nice girl mistaken for something else had just been shown her true calling in life, especially if she had gone upstairs as readily as Margaret had.
All right, now it's your turn. Before I turn to the floor to get some questions, I'm just curious to know, Armistead, do you have a formula when it comes to writing? You're a guy who gets up early and you're at your typewriter or your computer at 9 o'clock. What is the formula for you? Is there one? Is there a ritual?
It's usually in the morning, yes, and until I wear out, which is like 4 or 5 hours. I go very, very slowly. On a good day, I get 2 pages. I don't seem to be able to do anymore. Yeah, there's nothing beyond that. I'm a little bit crazy. I mean, Chris will tell you. It's really, people who live with writers know what that is, because it's a constant. I have a general roadmap in mind. I knew, for instance, that Margaret, who's just mentioned only by name in Tales of the City, the first time Anna Madrigal sits down on a park bench with Edgar Halcyon, and she finds out that as a boy he went to the Blue Moon Lodge and he remembers the name of the woman, and I thought, all right, her mother is a bit of a mess. If you remember Mother Mucka from Tales of the City, she's not really great at intimacy. And I wanted Andy to have a friend in the whorehouse that understood him on some level, and that was Margaret. And then she kind of grew as a character for me.
And Christopher, is he Are you able to read things to him? Do you need feedback? Some people, I mean, I'm a different kind of writer, but when I'm writing a story, I always have to look over my shoulder and say, how does this sound? Are you that kind of writer?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I try a lot of stuff on him.
Yeah. And well, you talk about crazy writers, but you know, we both work for crazy photographers.
Yes, well, it's good because it's not competitive, at least.
And there's always someone there to take your picture.
That's exactly right. He knows exactly what the angle is. I find when I go out on the road suddenly other photographers are doing things, I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, I'm going to be Alfred Hitchcock in this picture, you know.
My partner Rick is also a photographer. Questions? Who has questions for Armistead? Now's your time. Because we're not going to be in this city talking about another Tales of City book, if we believe him. But I think this could be it. So what's your question, love?
Now you're done with Tales of the City. Do you have another character in mind that's maybe completely different from this setting that you would like to present?
She's asking if I have other characters in mind. I have other ideas about what I want to write next. Living as I do at the end of a dirt road in the middle of the desert, with the stars above and coyotes howling at night, I'm getting some nights get kind of thrillery in my head, and so I play with that, you know. But I just don't know what I'm going to do next. I have what I would like to aspire to is a more of a stage thing, a one-man show where I get to sit on stage and tell stories.
Yeah.
That really appeals to me right now. Writing is a grind for me. I have to say, it is one long haul. Because I work so slowly, I don't do what they tell you to do, which is to spill it all out and then polish later. I can't do it, so it's like putting in little, I compare it to laying mosaic. You're putting in these tiny little chips, and then one day, a year and a half later, you'll get to stand back and look at the whole thing and maybe surprise yourself. But I've done a few kind of close to things that are close to being the show. I've appeared the last 2 summers, and I'm doing it again this summer at the Crown and Anchor in Provincetown. It's kind of me and Lorna Luft, the drag queen. But it's fun. I really love having the audience and telling the stories and getting the laughs and having the personal connection, because the writing, you know, of something is a very solitary thing, and I'm just at the age when I want to have that feedback from an audience. You know, there's a long tradition of it. Twain did it.
Yeah.
Shakespeare. Did he do that in his old age?
Sorry, Dickens.
Dickens.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Shakespeare came to America.
Yeah.
Dickens.
Tolstoy did it.
Sorry, Dickens.
Yeah.
Did his Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
I'm on flu medicine.
Yeah, it's all right. I would have believed you, so we but yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now, but it's nothing solidified.
Question, yes, your fellow burner friend.
Right. So does that whole Lysol thing have any basis in historical fact?
Absolutely.
Question.
Does the Lysol thing have any basis in historical fact? This is what the internet did for me when I was writing this novel. I started out, first I Googled 1930s whorehouse menu. Popped right up in with the prices and everything. The cheapest thing was something called a dry bob. I was so fascinated, I put it in the book and I never said what it was. Mother Mucker was running around and says, next one of you gals gives me sass is going to have to give a dry bob to that fatty from Battle Mountain. And then Andy was like, nobody wanted to give a dry bob to the fatty from Battle Mountain. But I should really have the name of her blog. I ran into this woman who had this wonderful kind of feminist blog where she was going back to the various indignities that women had been submitted to over the 20th century. And one of them was that Lysol was used as a spermicide. Well, they couldn't make that claim anymore. They claimed the same thing that FDS used to claim, you know, like as a freshener. I found an ad in Look magazine with the wife looking very concerned and the husband standing in the background scowling, and it said, "For the problem even your husband won't tell you about." Well, it kind of seems to me like the problem would be she smells like the kitchen floor.
But she's clean.
But they pulled that off for a while. I've actually thought about having they must have little miniature bottles of Lysol. It'd be a fun thing to give out to like every 5th customer or something.
99-cent ones.
There's a 99-cent one. Thank you, my dear.
And what did you use it for? Okay. Question right here. Yes, sir.
What's the future for the Tales of the City musical? Any news on that? I saw it here in San Francisco.
Yeah, I wish that. I would. Thank you. Yeah, I would too. Nothing.
Past album?
No, you can't do that because you got to get everybody together. You got to have an orchestra, and that had to have been done at the time, and it wasn't. Maybe it could change. Our young creative team went off in 8 different directions all at once in successful ways. Jason Moore, our director, did Pitch Perfect, that movie, and then the sequel, and doing a sitcom now. And I think librettist Jake Woody is doing some project for Gwyneth Paltrow in LA, and then the other 2 guys are rock and rollers who are always on the road. So nothing, and we all know what needs to be done to it. What we think would make it perfect, would make it right. We had that wonderful experience because the thing was extended 3 times at ACT, and we could really look at it and see what would work. But maybe, who knows?
Question right here.
Any chance of reviving the miniseries now with the final chapter?
People are always saying, "Oh, bring back Laura Linney, bring back so and so." Laura says, "I'm 50 fucking years old." It could not be revived in the sense of starting that one over again, but there have been noises made, shall I say, recently that are in the hands of suits right now to start the whole thing over again and march proudly through all 9 books. But it's nothing. I know not to make it just indicate that there's anything official, because there isn't, and there might never be, if that's vague enough. But there's interest. There's been interest.
What about film on this? Has there been a script to try and do a movie of one particular period in the tales?
Leah just asked about what about a film. The problem, it has to do with rights. The people, the Working Title, who owns the rights, the wonderful British company, has all of them. So that would have to be hammered loose. Olympia would like nothing better than to play Anna Madrigal in '92, but it may be tied up for that reason.
Yes, madam.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to pull rank on everybody in this room and tell you that I was reading Armistead before anybody was reading Armistead. Anybody in this room or anybody anywhere else, because I was his copy editor at the Chronicle.
Oh my God!
Barbara Foster.
And you were the one who was saying, "You cannot say shit kicker." And I would say, "But I said it last week, yes, but it was in the second paragraph."
No, we had to treat Army with kid gloves. First of all, he would come in kind of a little late sometimes, and he was, and then he
just a tiny bit.
This is good stuff.
Yeah.
And then, there was a lot of procrastination going on in that room. Army would engage us all in this witty conversation, and we would respond. We all had work to do. And he had a deadline. Was it daily or weekly? I can't remember.
Well, I'm just
daily,
realizing how wonderful to see you again.
Yes,
You're holding up really well. Of course, I was talking about this today, the day that the editor of the People Department, which is the old euphemism for the Women's Department, Randy Schultz and I think were the only 2 men in there, not at the same time, and Ruth Miller came over to me because I'd been talking too much, goofing off,
distracting us on the copy desk.
distracting everybody, trying to listen to Pat Stager's phone messages so I could hear juicy things from the society people. And Ruth came over to my desk and she walked over to me and she stood in front of me and she said, "Right." And I sat there for a moment, steam coming out of my ears, and I went over to Ruth's desk and said, "Don't ever say that to me again." And we all laughed because, I mean, she was right, you know.
Yeah.
But it was writing, it was literally, you know, it was the rules of being a reporter applied to writing fiction.